I never thought I would be the woman to keep a journal of evidence against my husband's mother, but here it is. 5 years of meticulous notes, screenshots, and entries stored in a password-protected folder labeled Tax Documents 2018 to 2025. It wouldn't have occurred to even David to look in there. The day I met Elaine Mercer, she smiled at me with perfect teeth and appraising eyes that never warmed. "So you're the girl who captured my David's heart," she said, her hand lingering on mine for a moment. How unexpected. That should have been my first warning. David had described his mother as traditional and demanding of her son. The understatement of the century. What he meant was that Elaine had managed every aspect of his life for 32 years and was not about to cede control to someone she deemed unworthy, namely me. I still remember our wedding day. While other brides worried about rain or floral arrangements, I spent the morning wondering if my future mother-in-law would show up in white. Thank goodness she didn't show up, but the pale silver dress with intricate beadwork that overshadowed my simple gown had the same effect. When she pressed herself against David during our first dance, whispering something that made him frown in my direction, I realized what I'd signed up for. "You'll get used to Mom," David assured me later that night. "She just needs time to get used to it." 5 years later, I'm still waiting for that time. During the first year of marriage, Elaine called every day, always during dinner. She developed mysterious illnesses when David and I were planning trips as a couple. She would rearrange our kitchen when she came to visit because David prefers glasses in the cabinet by the sink tier. In conversation with others, she referred to our house as David's house and to me as your current wife. I tried everything the experts recommend. I set boundaries which she ignored. I got David involved, who didn't see the problem. I even tried to build a relationship with her through cooking classes and shopping trips, during which she reminisced about David's ex-girlfriend Stephanie, who apparently made exceptional soufflés and had childbearing hips. The turning point came last Christmas. We hosted both families. My parents flew in from Arizona, my sister and her husband from Colorado. I spent weeks preparing, intent on creating the perfect holiday. On the morning of Christmas Eve, as I was putting the finishing touches on the table setting, the doorbell rang. On the doorstep stood Elaine with 4 huge suitcases and her yapping Pomeranian dog, Precious. "Surprise!" she shouted, pushing past me into the foyer. "The furnace in my house is broken. I'm staying until New Year's Eve." David already approved. My husband appeared behind me looking sheepish. "I was going to tell you, but you've been so busy getting ready." That night I caught Elaine in our kitchen at 3 a.m, completely revamping the menu I had planned. "David mentioned that your mom is allergic to shellfish, but I know he loves my seafood casserole. I'm sure your mom can find something else." My mom is anaphylactically allergic to shellfish. Elaine knew that. I stood in the doorway and watched this woman methodically destroy everything I'd worked on. The carefully selected recipes, the arrangement of dishes. Even the presents had been rearranged under the tree, and several new packages, all to David, all from Mom, were prominently displayed. Something inside me shifted. Not broke, but shifted, like tectonic plates coming together after years of pressure. "Elaine," I said quietly, "put the shrimp back in the freezer." She turned, looking at me in surprise. "Oh, I didn't notice you lurking in the shadows. I'm just fixing something. Between you and me, your menu was a bit pedestrian." I walked fully into the kitchen. "It's not about the food." "I don't know what you mean," she said, but her eyes narrowed slightly. 5 years, Elaine. 5 years of undermining and criticizing and manipulating. 5 years of trying to drive a wedge between David and me. 5 years of me trying to understand you, to fit in with you, to please you. She snorted derisively. You're dramatizing everything. That's why David always says you're so emotional. Really? I wonder, because he tells me he wishes you'd give me a chance. He doesn't understand why you can't see how happy we are. Her hands froze on the counter. My son tells me everything. We have no secrets. I smiled, feeling oddly calm. That's not entirely true. He didn't tell you about the job offer in Seattle, did he? The one we accepted? We're moving in February. The color vanished from her face. You're lying. We were going to announce it tomorrow, as a gift to ourselves. 3,000 miles is quite a reasonable distance, don't you think? What happened next still echoes in my head in quiet moments. Elaine's carefully constructed facade cracked. Not abruptly, she wasn't prone to outbursts, but in subtle cracks around her eyes and mouth. He won't leave me, she whispered. He won't leave you, Elaine. He's living his life. With me? She straightened, composure returning like armor. This conversation never happened. And if you think moving across the country is going to change anything, you're more naive than I thought. David and I are connected in ways you'll never understand. I stepped closer. Let me be very clear. I have documented every manipulation, every broken boundary, every attempt to undermine our marriage. David may not see a pattern yet, but if pressed, I will make him understand. The choice is yours. Adjust to our marriage or risk losing your relationship with your son completely. A silence hung between us, stretched by decades of her control and my resistance. Finally she spoke. You think you've won something here. This isn't about winning, Elaine. This is about survival. I wish I could say that things changed after that night, that Elaine had an epiphany and turned into a supportive mother-in-law who respected our marriage. The reality turned out to be more confusing. The move to Seattle took place. Elaine had a sudden interest in the culture of the Pacific Northwest, and she visited 6 times in 8 months. But something fundamental has changed. She still tries her usual tactics, but now when she calls during dinner, I answer cheerfully and put her on speakerphone. When she rearranges things in our house, I calmly put them back in place while she watches. When she mentions Stephanie's souffle, I ask for the recipe. David now notices. The charms of maternal infallibility have waned. Last week, when Elaine suggested that she might sell her apartment and find a little place nearby to help with the grandkids when they come, David surprised us both. Mom, he said softly, we need to talk about expectations and boundaries. The look she gave me could have frozen hell, but underneath that ice I saw something new. Respect. Not affection, and certainly not capitulation, but a reluctant recognition that I was a worthy opponent. Later that night, with David sleeping beside me, I updated my tax documents folder with the day's entries. Old habits die hard. But I also created a new folder, Reconciliation Opportunities. It has only one entry so far, Elaine's comment that my garden looks not completely hopeless, and her unexpected offer to send cuttings of her award-winning hydrangea. It's not the world, not yet, but it is survival. And in the complex ecosystem of family relationships, sometimes survival is enough to thrive in the end. This morning I got a message on my phone from Elaine. Thinking of coming to visit next month. Found a nice hotel nearby. Not our guest room. A hotel. Progress. I wrote back, the hydrangeas are blooming. Thanks for the cuttings. 5 years, 1,000 minor skirmishes, 1 major clash, and 3,000 miles later, we've reached a fragile detente. I don't know if Elaine and I will ever truly care for each other, but we both love David, and sometimes a shared love for another person is reason enough to build a relationship. Tonight I will close my evidence journal, perhaps forever. not because the past doesn't matter, but because I'm more interested in what comes next. Survival is complete. Now comes the hard part, finding a way to coexist that will not just avoid destruction, but will someday create something new.